I'm John Fox. I am something, not sure what my position is with Individual Cedar Mill. And our mission at Cedar Mill is succinctly stated that it's to regain and maintain a progressive electoral majority at all levels of government. And this is one of the places where we start. So we have a series of progressive candidates here tonight. We have some far alt-right band supporters that are not here. These are the progressive elements for these various offices. Before I start, I want to get going with, where's Jessica? Oh, there you are. Jessica is another person who doesn't have a title. She's a Washington County Resistance, and she's going to tell you something about them.
Hi everyone, I'm Jess Engel. I organize Washington County Resistance with Bill and our other group members. We're a community-based activist group. Our mission is to resist Trump's agenda and to stand up for justice, equality, and the environment. We have monthly meetings in Cedar Mill and have a guest speaker at each of those meetings, and also every month we do a donation drive for a local nonprofit that's standing up for our values in the community. We also have a monthly wine and wine where we just get together and commiserate and share ideas at Market of Choice, and we have a Facebook group called Washington County Resistance. And if you're interested in participating with us, we'd love to have you. There's a little half sheet on the table that has my email. Feel free to email me or ask us any questions tonight. And thank you so much for being here, and thank you to the candidates, and thanks to everybody who worked to put this on.
Thank you. Now, Karen Servan will tell you about the other co-sponsor here, which is Indivisible Cedar Mill.
Thank you everybody for making it tonight. I am co-leader with John with Indivisible Cedar Mill. We are a progressive grassroots and nonpartisan organization created to be the resistance to our current president. Resistance is built upon the values of inclusion, tolerance, and fairness. Our local chapter is one of 6,600 across the nation, and we work to rebuild, and maintain a progressive majority at every level of government, federal, state, and local. Our next meeting is April 9th. We always have our meetings on the second Monday of every month, and we have guest speakers. Prompt 1 hour is socializing, where we can play, drink wine, and build community. And then the next hour is a structured meeting where we talk about actions we can take to promote progressive values, and we oftentimes have guests like many of these fine members here tonight. So we hope that you join us, and thank you everybody for coming.
Thank you.
You guys.
My job is to introduce you to all the candidates here. We're starting with Dana Carstensen, who's running for Metro. After Dana earned a Bachelor of Science in Planning, Public Policy, and Management from the University of Oregon in 2013, he immediately became a Metro employee at the Oregon Zoo and has more recently become a Metro hazardous waste technician. He decided to run for the position because he sees untapped potential with Metro to be a regional tool to solve our growing list of regional concerns. With his 5 years of active internal experience with Metro and his planning education, Dana believes he'd be a successful servant leader of the planning agency that is Metro. Some of Dana's goals include developing a carbon-negative waste-to-energy facility, helping TriMet translate to a fully electric bus fleet, and combating the affordable housing crisis with community land trusts and limited equity conservatives. Dana Carstens. Sitting next to him is his opponent for Metro District Number 4, Juan Carlos Gonzalez. Juan Carlos Gonzalez is a proven leader, born in Forest Grove, raised in Cornelius, and living in Hillsborough, who has dedicated his life to public service. After graduating from Georgetown University with a degree in economics, he returned to Washington County to work at Centro Cultural, a nonprofit that empowers Latinos throughout Washington County. There he became known as a dynamic leader capable of bringing together stakeholders from all walks of the plans for the future. As the Director of Development and Communications, he worked with Metro to plan Chehalem Ridge Nature Park, helped TriMet create their long-range bus program, and develop the public engagement process for Metro's regional waste plan. A son to immigrants and small business owners, he will work to ensure that we call our region home and create the life they want to by expanding affordable housing, fixing bottlenecks that are clogging our transportation system, developing incentives for equitable growth at the Metro Council for District Number 4. So thank you. And next to him is Ryan Decker. Ryan is a former Democratic State Senator who grew up in Beaverton. Together with his wife Inga, he has 3 young daughters who are currently attending the same public schools that he once did. As Oregon's youngest state senator in history, my God. That was a long time ago, don't worry. He's grown since then. He authored the Gain Share Bill, bringing millions of dollars back to Washington County, led sentencing reform legislation to keep nonviolent offenders out of the prison system, and authored the free summer lunch program for children. Ryan previously served as the president of the Oregon Business Association. He has served in the boards of Habitat for Humanity, SMART, reading, and Washington County Community Action. Ryan wants to champion good livable communities of the future, and his priorities include combating crushing traffic with an all-in approach, affordable housing solutions, and investing in our public schools. Sitting next to him is Catherine Harrington. Growing up in a military family, Catherine moved around a lot. Then, nearly 30 years ago, high-tech jobs brought her and her husband Mark to Washington County. Her first true home in 2004. Catherine stepped back from her high-tech career to help working families get ahead and has been serving the community ever since. She has been an elected Metro Councilor for the past 11 years and is running for Washington County Chair to continue her work improving transportation, jobs, housing, for everyone in the community. She is the only Washington County Chair candidate endorsed by the Washington County Democrats, Oregon Working Families Party, the Oregon League of Conservative Conservation Voters, and all of the local education associations, and hundreds more. And much more. Next to her is Shava Woodley. Shava Woodley has been a member of the community for most of his adult life. As someone who has experienced most of the pressing issues in the county, from the needs of affordable housing to the lack of safe sidewalks for children, he hopes to bring a perspective that needs to be elevated in the commission, the everyday perspective. He believes the best type of leadership is servant leadership, which means his job is to make everyone else's job easier to do. As chair, he wants to prioritize investing in the services provided to the people of the county, affordable housing, updating infrastructure, and sustainable growth. Above all, he believes that the commission should do more on the prevention, meaning government stopping issues before they occur rather than intervention and only working the problems after they become known. Next to him is Greg Malinowski, the only other person here who has a tie.
Don't let Dana has one. Dana has a tie.
Take it off, take it off. Okay. Greg Malinowski has served Washington County Commissioner for 7 years, where he has worked to promote a local economy and protect the natural resources that support our government's way of life. The community's way of life, I'm sorry. He is a lifelong resident of Washington County area and has been a community leader for 42 years, growing up in a local farm that straddled the Washington and Multnomah County line. Greg learned from an early age the importance of hard work and conservation. As a commissioner, he has stood up for the people to make sure big developers pay their fair share for needed road improvements. And he has pushed to fund safe routes to school so the kids have a safe way to walk to class. Greg is running for re-election because he will have a lot of work to do on the county commission, and he wants to continue to be a champion for the people, bringing the voice of our community to the forefront. And last but not least, because she's right next to me, is Pam Treese, who is also running for District number 2. Pam Treese has spent the last 20 years helping to make Washington County a place where we can all live, work, and raise our families. She has broad experience, including as a public school teacher, a small business owner, and a leader in regional economic development, and has served our community in diverse ways. Pam chaired the $680 million Beaverton School Bond, helped design TriMet's low-income fare program, and consistently worked to promote training and apprenticeship opportunities to workers. Pam's priorities as commissioner will be to make sure housing is attainable and that residents can afford to live where they work, to tackle our transportation and construction needs, and to make sure that we can grow and retain good-paying jobs in Washington County. A noble set of objectives, will you give them a round of applause? We did that because we aren't going to be able to applaud them until the end of the meeting. Going to turn this meeting over to Paige Dixon now, who's seated at the end of the table. She is with Washington County Resistance, one of the amorphous leaders down there with no title, but she's an important person, and she'll take everybody through the questioning. And sitting in the front row is Karen Dixon, Karen Servant, and she has a time clock to keep everybody.
Because we want to get out of here before 10 tonight, right? Okay.
Behind you, there's a speaker, and you'll hear it chime at the end. I wondered what
All right, well, thank you, John. That was a great introduction. Tonight's questions were solicited from the members of Indivisible Cedar Mill and Washington County Resistance. We hope that these questions represent what you want to know and what you want to know before you're voting for your candidate. Due to the number of candidates, because it's quite a few, and the number of questions, we will not be having an open Q&A at the end, just FYI, but we hoped that this would cover most of yours questions you will have. So this portion of the evening, we'll have questions for all the candidates, as well as specific questions for the chairs, District 2, and the Metro 4 candidates. When we start, I will read the question, the attended audience, if it would be like Metro 4, and the amount of time allotted. So you will know if it's we're going to either have 1 or 2 minute questions, nothing more than that, for each candidate to answer. Karen is holding the timer to help each candidate gauge how much time will be remaining while they're speaking. Please, let's all agree to be respectful to our fellow candidates and to not go over time if at all possible. Can I get a yes from you for that agreement? All right. Thank you very much. So let's begin. This one is going to be for all 7 candidates, and it's 2 minutes long. And let's see. So we're not going to start with the softball. Sorry, guys. We all know that developers and other business interests influence politics. Can you help us understand what portion of your campaign funding comes from business or real estate development interests? How does that influence your decisions? So we'll start with Dana, and again, it's 2 minutes. So it's how much are you influenced by? I'm sure.
None. I have no business donations and no developer donations, so it has 0 influence over me, and I believe that's how it should be, quite honestly. I'm more of a proponent of taking campaign contributions from people and voters, because I think that's who I'm there to represent, the voters and the people. Yeah.
Thank you, Dana. Well, let's go down the line on the first one.
All right, great.
Juan Carlos?
Hi everyone. My name is Juan Carlos. So glad we're here on this beautiful sunny day. Well, when I look at my campaign contributions, I think I've received maybe about a quarter of mine. I mean, it's hard to paint it from organizations like the Chamber or the Portland Metropolitan Area Realtor Association of Realtors, etc. And the reason that I approach that the way that I do is because I think that the most crunching issues in our region, when I think about housing and transportation, at the end of the day, we need multi-sector partnerships, right? We need buy-in from people, from businesses, from labor, and I'm really lucky to count on a diverse base of support. And that's just the way that I've approached this campaign. If I wish that campaigns didn't have to rely on outside money, but I mean the truth is that right now the way the system is set up is it costs money. I mean it costs money to print things, it costs money to buy lawn signs, and when it comes to sharing the message of the region that I want to leave for future Oregonians, I really want to make sure that I can reach every voter, and that's why I'm fundraising as hard as I can.
Thank you, Juan Carlos.
So you jumped right into it. I think I'm most proud of the fact that as I looked at our fundraising and what we've done, and Juan Carlos is right, that it is unfortunate that campaigns are super expensive. And the first time that I ran for office, we were under a different set of rules, which was $100. That no candidate could take more than $100. And so I was, as John was talking about, pretty young. I was 24 at the time. Washington County was completely Republican at the time, all red, and the state was actually somewhat red in the mid-90s. And I took on the vice president of Georgia Pacific, the chair of the Republican Party at the time, in a district that had never really elected a Democrat ever. And I won, partly because of the rules of the game. That $100, no one could give more than $100, And so all the incentive for me was to go out and really talk and meet voters. And no one thought this 24-year-old we would debate like this, and I had no resume at all. And he was like chair of the Republican Party, vice president of Georgia Pacific. But it was really grassroots and people that made the difference. So I'm really incredibly pleased in this campaign. I think we've had the least amount of money from developers. I can't think of actually one. That maybe they are, but I can't think of one. And most of the people, I would say up to 90 to 95% of the people that have contributed to this campaign, and they tell me straight up, I've never given in a Washington County chair's race. I don't care about Washington County, but I know you. So there are people that have very little interest in this, but they've worked with me for 20, 30 years. They've been on my board, they're my colleagues. And those are who funded this campaign, and I think I feel most strongly. It's been really touching to me. Because up until the new year, all we did was just little events. We never even jumped on the phone. We just did events and people came and contributed to the campaign. Thank you.
Catherine?
So to your question about developers and business interests, I have a few contributions from business owners, such as the Verniers of Vernier Software here in Washington County, which is emblematic of the majority of my contributions do come from business owners or, more importantly, residents here in Washington County, over 50% of them. Additionally, 60% of my contributions are small contributions of $200 or less. For developers, I know there's one developer who has developed projects here in Washington County, two of them.
Okay.
Dwight Untie from Tokolo Properties and Roy Kim, who has done developments not only in Bethany but in Beaverton. And you can see all of this information right on the Secretary of State's website as well with Warstar. And I've downloaded my reports, and that's how I did this analysis on the size. I've also done that with my opponents as well. And it's quite a contrast if you take a look and spend a little time on Excel in terms of looking at that. The vast majority of my funding is from individuals, not businesses, not developers, but individuals. Thank you.
Thank you. Shabbat?
And again, thank you for having us here. I want to say that
Shabbat.
as far as donations from developers or businesses that have done, I think it's very important to try as best as possible to not have donations from developers or businesses. I went to some of these meetings for endorsement, and you do it just because it's the right thing to do. If you get an invitation, you shouldn't smack anyone's hand away. But the point is, you research some of these organizations, they're against a lot of things that we actually need. I had the opportunity to read with one of the Chamber of Commerce, and they specifically were against 97, and not just that, but other things that the community desperately needs. So I think for it to be balanced and fair, balance out the money that they have and the influence that they have, it's better to not take their money, so you can be fair not only to the people but the businesses at the same time. We're fighting against a lot: affordable housing, infrastructure, taxes, things like that, and some of the main opponents we have are the developers and the businesses at the same time. So I think it's very important and crucial that your agenda, especially about progressives, is it's just not tainted by organizations that want you to work in their interests instead of the people's interests. Thank you.
Thank you. Greg?
And by and large, I have not received a lot of money from developers. I kind of have a rule of thumb that I'm not going to take. I think if somebody gives you, especially a business person gives you, $10,000, he's kind of expecting that you're going to do something with it that will help him out. There's nothing wrong with them wishing that, but I failed to deliver. The nicest compliment I ever got from a developer was, and it wasn't in this race, it was in an earlier version of this race, my first one in 2010. He said, well, Greg, I talked to both of you, and he said, I think you would be the better county commissioner, but he said, I think I'll make a lot more money if the other guy gets it. So, and I take that as a compliment. I say, yeah, that's right. Because the truth of the matter is, at the county commission, you try and balance things out. And the key word is balance. You're not just working for, a couple of dozen people. You're working for the public, the folks who count on you. So if you'll check, you'll see most of my donations are fairly small. I push a lot the fact that the state of Oregon will give you a $50 tax credit. When you donate $50, the next year off your income taxes, and say, so if you want to loan me the money for a year or so, but I go ahead and try and do that to make sure that I'm getting a well-rounded group of people from all different varieties with all different issues to try and understand what they want. Because it's really a balancing act. You've got 150,000 people.
Thank you. Pam?
Well, thank you for putting this event on tonight. I want to thank all of you for being here. I think it's important that we engage in these discussions, so I have a lot of respect for your organization, and again, I want to say thank you. When it comes to campaign support, I can tell you that it is, as being the last person on the list here, it is expensive. It is, unfortunately, it takes a lot of money to do these types of things, much more than I had understood even before I came into this. This is my first campaign, and so I'm frankly quite surprised. I have a percentage of my money has come from the business sector. I will tell you that I'm 66 years old. I have been in the business world and as a teacher, as running a nonprofit for my entire life. So if you go on Orstar, you'll see different levels of donations from different people, but it represents a wide range. I have donations from my high school friends, and that was nearly 50 years ago, as well as from the people that I've worked with on various boards and organizations. So while and I also have support from union organizations. So I'm very proud of the fact that when you look at Orstar and go down the list, what you'll see is a level of support that represents a wide range. And like I said, I'm proud of that. I do think that it is important to look at the multi-sector aspect and what partnerships it takes to build, to develop, to make sure that we have a community where we all can function and be balanced and be partners together. That's a very important piece as well. Thank you.
Thank you. The next couple of questions will be for the 5 Washington County Commissioners. So don't worry, Metro, we're coming back to you. So this next question will be 1 minute and for the 5 of you. Since 40% of greenhouse gases come from food waste, Multnomah County and other jurisdictions throughout the country have figured out how to do curbside food waste pickup. Walker Garbage told me last week they will only institute food waste pickup program if they are directed to do so by Washington County. So, do you support taking this definitive action to make this a reality in unincorporated Washington County? If yes, tell us what you would do. And if not, tell us why you don't support this. You'll have 1 minute, and we're going to start with Pam because you were so graciously last time, so I'll start with you.
I'm not sure it's a thing to go first.
Okay. Sorry.
Well, I can tell you that in my home, we compost in the backyard. So we're composting, and I have a vegetable garden that I use my compost with. I hear in Multnomah County the pros and cons. I think that there are people that are not in favor of the mandatory aspects of composting in their garbage. Personally, I believe that we should be looking at every way that we can to work toward clean opportunities, and composting should be part of that. So I would say I would support.
Okay, a food composting.
Yes,
Yes. Okay. All right. Thank you, Greg. Would you like to go next?
Sure.
1 minute.
We have looked at that. As a matter of fact, I met with a group of people here in Cedar Mill to discuss putting that in probably 2 or 3 years ago now. I've approached the county staff about it. They've asked that we go ahead and do some kind of a pilot project, and actually it's being done in Forest Grove. Long-term, I don't see any reason not to do it, not to go ahead with it. I think it's going to be part of the system for how we handle waste. We tried doing a lot of food recycling with Recology, and we discovered that if you're not doing it right, it smells. And it may require that it's an enclosed system in order to make it work near an urban area. The other fun fact with this, before I run out of time, is that although the compost takes like, what did they say, 8 weeks to make from the time you start to the end, those forks that turn into dust, I'll just say they take about 15, 16 weeks. And so
Yeah, yes. All right, thank you, Greg. Okay. Thank you very much. Shava?
So, it's only a minute, so I'll try to make it as quick as possible, but I think it's something you should definitely be looking forward to. I was born here in Oregon and raised here too, but I lived in New York for part of my life, and I would see reports and read articles in the newspaper about how Oregon is so far ahead when it comes to recycling, and a lot of different things we do. So I think to keep that point of pride and the culture that we have here in the county and in our state as well, that's something we should be doing. And I'm happy to hear from Greg that we're actually doing a pilot project on it. So I'd be interested to see how it's working out, see how it can be expanded, how it's, some of the troubles that come with it, some of the benefits are evident. How long will it take for them to come? But yes, 100% on board.
Okay, thank you.
So the answer is yes, I would support it for urban unincorporated Washington County with a couple of caveats.
Okay.
If garbage service continues to be weekly, because when Portland instituted it, they went to every other week garbage collection, and for some that continues to be problematic. They're still getting too many diapers in the residential pickup. Also, we have to have a solution or an exclusion for apartment buildings because they don't have yard debris bins. But actually, while residential composting makes us feel good, it isn't the highest and best use, nor is it the largest quantity. Commercial food scraps is. And as a Metro councilor, we're working on this now, and we're literally having to drag the Washington County Commission, the conservative majority, into supporting this program. Their staff's done a marvelous job. They're totally on board.
Thank you, Catherine. And last but not least.
The foghorn was much worse.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm timing it now. Catherine nailed it in terms of not bi-weekly, so you have to do it weekly, but yes, with that caveat in the apartments, but out so that it's residential first. The second part, and I think it's super, super important, is how do we resist? So one way we resist what's happening at the national level is we do things locally here. So that is a good example. One is we can set a renewable portfolio standard. Many counties across the country have done it, and we just say that we're going to get off of coal and carbon, high intensity carbon, by 2035. So Multnomah County has done it. Washington County absolutely should do that. There are several areas in the environment that we can that is one of the best forms of resistance because it sends market signals out and it tells folks who are mining, whether it be food scraps or coal generation, and we did it at the state level, but Washington County has done what it usually does, which is they resisted the wrong way, which is do nothing.
Okay, thank you. We're going to have a few more for the commissioners. You'll get to end up the show here. So, all right, the next question is another 1-minuter. So, what would you do to address the needs of homeless residents, especially students in Washington County? And I'm going to start with Shava first because we're going to mix it up a little.
All right, so as far on the county level, we have to get very aggressive when it comes to housing. Basically, we got to get innovative. We got to look at communities of interest that pretty much keeps affordable housing local and in the control of people who live there at the same time. I spoke on this before, but even if we have a bond that concentrates on building more affordable units, in the meantime, we got to get aggressive about rent control. That's one of the things that people in the 2 biggest counties in Oregon talk about all the time. And we're not going anywhere with it. There's been some steps in Multnomah County, but not as much here, but we gotta be aggressive on it, talk about rent control and make it happen so people can find a place and stay there for a very long time.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Greg?
Yes, we have a huge problem in Washington County. Some of it's by design. We have a situation where every day 72,000 people who make $21 an hour or less have to drive into this county and find somewhere else to go at night to sleep. That's almost half the people who make in that wage level. Our development, we've tried to point it at people of needs, and so a lot of our housing, single-family residential, you're talking about having to have $80,000 a year in family income in order to have a place, $500,000 homes. We need to concentrate on homes that fall between 200 and 350, and yeah, 200 and 350,000. We're about 20,000 short, and they're going to have to be condos. We simply can't get affordable with everybody having a half-acre land. So we need to work together, we need to work with the development community, and as a county, we need to identify underperforming land and get it changed.
Thank you. Catherine?
So homelessness, especially students, we need to act now. We can't wait for land trusts. We need to get more shelters available throughout our communities in Washington County. The Beaverton School District, so the city of Beaverton and the unincorporated areas have the largest population of homeless students, over 1,500 with another 400 over to the west of us and 150 to our south. Well, with Community Action does support a family shelter, but there are many on its board who boast that folks only use it one time, as though that means that people are back on their feet, and they're not. They're just finding out that for whatever reason, that one place isn't satisfying their needs. We need more availability as available right now. The county's left it up to cities, churches, and volunteers to deal with, and we need to take ownership of it and put money into it.
Thank you. Pam?
The question is about the homeless issue, and again about students that are in that situation. As Catherine said, there are 1,600 kids in Beaverton School District alone every night that are housing unstable. They don't know where they're going to be sleeping, if they're on couches, if they're with their aunt, if they're with somebody else. That's just not acceptable. We need more shelters. We need to put money into that. We also need to understand what our resources are throughout the community so that we can work cooperatively together to solve this problem. We need to look at programs where we provide people housing vouchers and training opportunities at the same time. You can't have a house without a job, and you can't have a job without a house. You've got to be able to pull those two things together, and there are excellent programs that are operating right now in Multnomah County that we could duplicate. Bottom line is we are not doing enough, and we need to step up and do more.
Thank you. And finally, Ryan. Sorry, you're last this time again.
So we just heard 3,200 students tonight will go to bed. They won't go to bed homeless in the 10th most affluent county on the West Coast, and that is disgraceful. That is disgraceful and that is a statement about us and about leadership. So if we have, we obviously have to have a public investment. There's no market interest in housing homeless, so it's going to take public effort. And that's the Washington County way. It's been very laissez-faire. As Sheryl Sandberg wrote in her famous, lean in. We, as a county, have leaned out and done literally nothing. And one of the greatest experiences I had is when I was in the state senate. The job I had for 6 months was working at the Community Transitional School, which is a school for homeless children in the metro area. And going into that school every day and seeing the dignity of a meal and a sweater and just a basic life for these kids, it kept them out of the criminal justice system and in school learning. And so my time's up.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. We're going to stay with those guys, don't worry. Currently, unincorporated Washington County is not in a library district, which is why we have the cooperative libraries of Bethany and Cedar Mill. Would you support a library district north of Highway 26? This is a 1-minute question, and we'll start with you, Ryan, since you've been the last 2 times.
Sure. So a library, so just a special library district just for north of...
It allows us to have better buildings and...
and funding for the...
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you already started my time? I think. Well, I mean, I don't know. I frankly have not given that a great deal. We live in unincorporated right by the West Slope Library. I think my girls were at it yesterday. So a vital library, I mean, we were talking a bit about how do you resist and what builds community? Well, great schools, great parks, libraries, community centers, which I think is trying. You see the effort that's being made to develop a sense of community right in this area. And so a library sits at the heart of it. And to me, that is my greatest reason I'm sitting in this chair, is because having grown up in Washington County, we've done some great things, but foster livable communities and foster a place with a sense of soul and a sense of being, it just hasn't happened. And frankly, I wish I'd have ran 20 years ago to start working on this.
Okay, Greg, could you go? Would you be next, please?
Sure. The county does have a decentralized library program. These libraries are not all completely independent. If there's a book you're looking for in your local library and it's in, Banks or something, then we have a computerized system. We'll go ahead and have that sent out to your library when it's available, so you can access it there. So it's decentralized. There is some money the county puts in every year into the overall group of them. And thank goodness in the last 4 years, we've gotten a new library in Aloha. It was one of our most unlibraried areas in Urban County. And they now have one, and we were able to nurture them along. They got some money on their own. The county put in some money, and now they have a building. What's huge for a lot of our unincorporated libraries is that they have a lot of volunteers. They have people who care, people who are going to go give time to make sure that the library works for people. Cedar Mill is a great example. And
Okay, thank you. Catherine, could you be next?
So for a proposal of a library district, I believe it would need to encompass all of the communities that make up urban unincorporated Washington County, not just north of the highway. Ryan mentioned West Slope, Aloha has been mentioned, but what about Bull Mountain, right? What about the Metzger area? All of these areas are part of urban unincorporated Washington County, and they don't have alternatives to turn to either. So I am in total support of allowing the people of urban unincorporated Washington County, the voters, to decide if they want to create a library district and a taxing authority to support that.
Okay, thank you. Shaba?
Yes, so I would support it. One other thing to look at as well, when we talk about libraries, that's only part of the equation. I had the opportunity to speak to a couple people in the unincorporated parts of Washington County, and what they're looking for is a sense of culture at the same time. So libraries are just part of it. There's a lot of things that they're looking for, just to, like Ryan said over there, just a sense of community. They want more things to occur there. They want other activities. They want it to feel vibrant, and they need the funds and they need support from their commission to allow that to happen as well. So I think it does have to go to people as far as like what they need to make it happen. And I've benefited from libraries, my brother has, so I think it's a no-brainer to make it happen, but also help these areas develop a sense of community and culture as part of their DNA.
Okay, thank you. And last but not least, Pam.
Thank you. I grew up in the days of the bookmobile, and I can tell you that the bookmobile was one of the highlights of my summer days. There's no question about it, and I believe strongly that we need to have libraries available to our population base. And when a population base takes the initiative to do that, I believe that they should be supported. The other thing that I commit to is that we need to make sure that our library funds stay associated with the library in the general fund. That's a very important piece. I visited the libraries throughout our district. I've gone to the West Slope Library. I was just in the Cedar Hill Library, and the sense of community that exists there, from the little kids in their reading corners to the adults working on the computers there. It's important, it's vital, and we have to keep that. And when a community comes together to put their energies behind developing a library, I think we need to support that. Aloha is the best case in point.
Okay. All right. And this is our last question for the 5 of you, and this will be a 2-minute question. So how specifically would you make changes in Washington County to create more affordable housing? So we're looking for specifics here. And I'm going to start with Greg first.
Okay, thank you very much. I almost tried to answer this for the homeless folks, but specifically, our county has a policy of only adding ground for residential if somebody's got an option on it and it'll bring money in. There's even been talk that we should go ahead and expand the boundary just to make affordable housing. That puts it out in the end of nowhere, no bus, no grocery stores, no anything. And if we forget about getting ground in that just has somebody going to get rich from it, we might look at some of the older buildings and older areas that are a little distressed. Like if you go down TV Highway, there are malls that are sitting at 80% of occupancy and have been there for 15 or 20 years. So, and it's critical that we go ahead and look at rezoning those. Now, the county's official policy is that's up to the landowner to pay for it. But the truth of the matter is, we need to go ahead and rezone those now so we can get those units. We need to rezone it to make it easy for someone to develop. We need to work with the development community to find out what it is they need to make this work. We really do need homes in the $200,000 to $350,000 range. So I think I've suggested several years in a row now that we get busy and look at those commercial properties and industrial properties along that TV Highway, for instance, and find ones that are in the bottom 20% of the rental rates and see if we can't rezone those to see if we can't jumpstart it. Because we need homes for over half the people in this county. And we definitely have to have a way of doing that so it's affordable for them without having to subsidize people even at 120% of median. So the key thing to do is to rezone those areas and then let the market and nature take its course until we have to do something different.
Thank you. Ryan?
Sure. So we look at today, and this is going to get a bit wonky, but specifics are needed in this. So we look at the challenge that we've discussed today in terms of 23,000 units just yesterday needed. If we look around the corner, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, and the economic dislocation that is going to come everywhere to America, and we know the statistics, the number one vocation in 27 states, number 2 in Oregon, is what? It's driver. So the technology is already in place through automation that many, if not all of those jobs are going to be completely eliminated. And we know if we go to a grocery store or a hotel or a motel that we will no longer interact with humans anymore. And so the massive economic dislocation that's coming, combined with baby boomers writ large retirement savings, we know if nothing occurs, no dramatic change in political leadership, this would be looked at as the best of times right now. The best of times with 3,200 kids homeless tonight. So we're going to have to take incredible different change in terms of policies, and here are 3 specifics. So 1, we need to pass a bond. There needs to be a new public investment that many cities and counties across America have made, and Washington County, we've just taken a lean out approach. So that's 1. 2, to get more market rate, those 185 to 300 and affordable. First, we have to take, so there's 2 big state highways, and it's unique to Washington County, running right through the middle, 99W and Canyon to TV Highway. Those are state highways. So we did it when I was in the Senate. We took back control of state highways and say, you're not utilizing those highways well. And if you just drive down the dilapidated shopping center after dilapidated shopping center, those are your transit corridors. So those should be, A, for shelter beds, immediate shelter beds that you use your public investment. But secondly, they should be multifamily. We should build out, because those are your high transit corridors. So you should see.
Shava, could you go next, please?
Yes, so as far as specifics, I also want to reach on the specific type of people that we need to help in the meantime as well. I had the opportunity to actually testify at Beaverton City Hall where we talked about what's needed for affordable housing. People told their stories. I told my story as well. One of the key things that we have to look at and try to support and help is the senior folks at the same time. We definitely need to invest in public housing. That's one of the things we need to do. That way we can have stable rents basically for the people who are on the senior side of the age spectrum, and they're able to live their life as best as they can, and don't have to worry about, the next increase, they'll be kicked out, or they have to live in a car. Like I mentioned before, community land trust is something that we definitely have to look at. It's been a proven thing that's worked in multiple communities across the country, and I 100% believe in it. Another thing, we have to buy land when it's cheap. One of the things I've looked at is, have a set money aside, basically, and then as you know, things fluctuate, land fluctuates as far as how much it's worth. Buy it when it's cheap, sell it, or use it, give it to organizations, or use it to build more affordable houses that way. Bond, I think most of us here are on board with the bond. We know it's a big problem. It's been a problem ever since, I understood the English language here in Oregon, is that we need some things to be done. In addition to that, I mentioned earlier, rent control. I think like all the counties should get together, get aggressive with our state legislators and overturn the rule saying that there can't be any local rent control, because that's a major factor that's getting people kicked out of their homes. Like I said, intervene instead of, or be preventative instead of intervene when the problem gets too much, basically.
Thank you. Catherine?
Absolutely thumbs up on the bond. I'm already working on it as a Metro councilor. The Washington County Board chose to not move forward with the Washington County specific funding, even though they had positive polling results. But they just don't take risk to put that in front of the voters and put their political capital behind it to work with you on it. Secondly, Washington County has some really good staff, but they've not been willing to put Washington County money into practice. They're sitting on a 25% general fund in reserves, even though their policy says 10 to 15%. That is your money that's not being put into action on a crisis that we have today. Some of that funding should be used to retain naturally occurring affordable housing. We have examples of this right on Washington County corridors, Jenkins Road in Beaverton, where an apartment complex was renovated and totally priced out the prior occupants. And by the way, they're having trouble leasing it now because their target market just isn't quite interested in that community area. So there are lots of different tired properties. Greg mentioned rezoning. There's plenty of tired shopping malls all on these main corridors where mixed use development makes perfect sense. But the county board needs to be willing to put its own dollars into action to do these things, as well as to go after grants that they hadn't been willing to do because they would only get funding for a few years. Well, a few years of solutions would go a long way. And we can't wait until land is cheap. We can't wait to for land trust. We need to take action this year and into next year, or we're going to keep more people behind.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to give the Washington County people a little breather here and.
Wait.
Did I forget? I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, Pam. I'm so sorry.
Can't get away that easy.
Yes.
So I was going to say, when you go last, a lot of it's ditto on this issue. The one piece that we haven't talked about here is the piece that I think is critical. We've got the problem, we know it's a crisis, we have to address it, but what we haven't done is have a visionary group from our citizens, from our residents, come together and talk about what should the vision be for Washington County. We do that, we've done it effectively in Beaverton, we've done it in Hillsborough, there's been other cities that have done that. I believe as a county, we should be pursuing that type of approach. Talking with our residents, gaining information, and acting on those issues that are raised, and the ideas and the innovation that comes from that. Next thing is, I think we need to look at best practices from other areas, not just in Oregon, but across the country. What has worked in other areas that we can take advantage of and employ here. I agree that we need to pass a bond. I agree that the Thrives Initiative was a solid piece of work, and we should be looking strongly at that. I also think that we need to have expediency in our permitting process so that we can hurry the process so that the whatever comes into place, whether it's multifamily or whatever, doesn't have the cost of money attached to it at the high degree. We should be looking at requiring a percentage of the developments that come in to be affordable housing. So that's another piece. Altogether, when you move those different blocks together, especially with the citizens' involvement, I think you can really start to tackle the problem. But we need to be talking and working together first across our nonprofits and across our residents.
Thanks, ma'am. Again, my apologies for that.
I didn't let you go.
Okay, so now we'll switch over to our Metro District 4 candidates, and we're going to talk about one near and dear to my heart. This will be a 2-minute question. What would you do to address the lack of parking at Sunset Transit Center? So we can encourage more mass transit use. Because as you know, where does the traffic jam start? Right by Sunset Transit Center every morning. So, why don't you start one, Carlos?
Okay, it's 2 minutes or 1 minute?
2.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. I just wanted to give the Washington County a little bit of break, so I've kind of changed the order of the questions a little bit here. My bad, but there you go.
Well, really excited that we can finally get to focus on Metro. In terms of Metro, and we look at regional planning, we look at Sunset Transit Center. What I think is interesting, I was having a conversation with someone, was that right now the way the structure set up isn't necessarily planned to continue building additional lots on it. I believe that we need to continue developing housing that is way closer to these places. I think that we need to invest in strategies that actually get people off of cars before they need to get to these places. I think that we need to systematically invest in housing that is closer. That's really important to me. When I think about communities that are around Orenco or Quetama, you have that housing focus there. The future of this region should be one that doesn't rely on cars. I think that's something we all agree in. I think we need a lot more responsive bus service and systems that can help people connect from unincorporated Washington County to connect with the transit center. Right now, it's just not doing the job, in my opinion. I know that often elected officials in Washington County, when I've met with them to talk to them about the issues, they tell me that they don't feel like we're getting our fair share of investment back in how TriMet should be more responsive. When I got to work with TriMet and engaging the Latino community on the western end of the region, we often talked about Line 57. That's one line from Hillsborough to Forest Grove. Not only do we need to have more frequent bus service, consider 24-hour bus service, but right now the bus system in our region is just too east-west. We need more north-south, we need more connection with neighborhoods. But in order to make that economically feasible, we just absolutely need to invest in the housing density. And I'm all about unsiloing the issues, because if we're going to address these complex problems, we can't just look at it as a housing issue, not just a transportation issue, not just a garbage issue. It all needs to come together, be braided to build the region we need to. Whew.
Thank you. Dana?
I believe the Sunset Transit Center parking station is 2 stories.
Correct.
It was originally planned to be 4, if I'm not mistaken, and unfortunately they didn't do that. They didn't look at the cost to benefit ratio of having something that was twice as large for one of the busiest transit stops around. I'm not sure if it could actually be built on top of, but I think we need to look at different locations within the Max line to actually look at maybe possible building another parking structure. They're incredibly expensive, but their average is about $10,000 per parking spot when you're building a parking structure. They are not cheap. However, if we are using it to such the degree that we're using the one at Sunset Transit Center and people want it and they're willing to spend their tax dollars on it, we need to take a serious look at it. The Beaverton Transit Center, there's I believe an open space there, just empty field that's not being really utilized for anything. Maybe look at that space. I'm not sure. We need to just look at different options. Maybe it's a block away. Maybe it can't be right on the line, but it can be within a walkable distance. Look at the entire line, see how we can or disperse the traffic that needs to park. Maybe they're willing to go one stop longer so they can park. Maybe, we don't have to put it all right there. Give people a choice. And I think it would be a worthwhile investment for Metro to look into that as a regional planning tool, because we are a tool of the counties and the local cities to figure out what are the best spots, where are people meeting it, where are they going. I think that's a perfect opportunity for Metro to be a tool for the region.
Okay, thank you. Our next one is also a 2-minute question. And this is why don't the systems development charges assigned to developers include charges for the schools that will result from the additional student loans from all the new people moving into those areas? Dana?
So the charges from new development go to...
Yeah, but they don't charge them for the schools.
Or they don't, rather, they...
And
why it doesn't.
Exactly.
I mean, to be honest, I haven't looked into this issue specifically, but if I had to take, guess, it's because local governments and local authorities have chosen that way. It's kind of like a, we're going to use all the resources in your community to develop and rely on your built infrastructure, but we're not going to give back to you and your schools. I think we need to re-look at those issues that are coming up. That's new to me. I didn't know about that one. And figure out, okay, when was this decision made? What are the impacts if this decision was reversed? And see, take it to the community, and if they want us to fix it, well, then let's fix it. But if they are using the resources of what we've already put in through our tax dollars, our roads, our sewers, our electric lines, our water, and they're relying on that to make a profit on their development, they should be giving back to the community. They're making millions of dollars. If they're making millions of dollars in profit, well, you know what? Share that wealth back to the community, which you're making millions off of. That's definitely a thing I think we should look at.
Thank you. Juan Carlos?
So, in terms of the complexities of housing and the mechanics of financing it, not only for affordability but for market rate, I just want to start off by saying that I think that when we look at the housing market of the future, it needs to be one with multiple options for people of different walks of economic life, whatever that means. But in terms of SDC, system development charges, that's an issue that I keep hearing come up. Planners, when I talk with the director of planning from Hillsborough, actually when I've had conversations with people that are involved in the housing industry, both on the affordable side and on the market rate development side, is these are fees that have over time, one, created uncertainty in the process, and also makes it difficult for these investments to be managed in the long term. But most importantly is it causes a type of clunk in the way that a process can be slowed down. For example, there's a number that's floating in my head of SDCs right now, which is what we're talking about $40,000 to $50,000 per unit is being added on for housing. And what we're seeing, what developers are telling us, and from what I've heard in my meetings when I'm meeting with and trying to get a good understanding of the issues, is that these are costs that are being passed on to the consumer. And that's just the way that the market economics has always worked, right? You pass on the cost to the consumer. I don't agree with that, but it's happening. So what I propose is that when we look at SDCs, I think we need to streamline it. I think we need to be able to have partnerships that make it easier to build housing, especially when we look at affordable housing. How are we going to build that affordable housing when you have all of these costs that are going to be continued to pass on? I think there are inherent costs in the process that make it difficult to keep things affordable. That's why we need options like the housing bond to help subsidize or to help innovate with the finance mechanisms.
Well, thank you. I'm going to go back to the 3 commissioner chair candidates, and this is a 1-minute question. This is the long one, so if you need me to repeat it, let me know. There are 4 candidates for the county commissioner chair. And this is a top 2 primary. So what that means is only 2 can win and then they go to the primary. If you find out that you're not one of the top 2, and one of the other progressives in the race is in a runoff against Mr. Bob Terry, will you pledge today to enthusiastically support, endorse, and campaign for the progressive candidate that faces off against Mr. Terry in the general election? That would be 1 minute, and I'm going to start with Catherine.
No. If I thought there was someone in this race that shared my values, my progressive values, and had a track record of working for our community and would truly be dedicated for working with the community, then there would be someone to support, but there isn't.
Okay. Ryan?
Kind of feels like you guys remember
You don't have to say who, you just say, yes, I would
Absolutely,
enthusiastically
yes.
support
Yes.
them.
Yes, we talked about the dreadful county approach that we've had for the last 2 decades or 3 decades. And we must, it's important, it's really critical that we change that direction. So yes, with enthusiasm. And the only, it reminded me of, you guys remember the Republican debates that they had, and they would have all the, and they could get Trump to say, so that was my only, I felt like, oh my gosh, we were having this Trump moment. Really get Trump to say he would support Rand Paul or whoever. No, the answer is yes.
Okay, thank you. Shava?
So a little conflicted on that side. I think it's going to be kind of in between both the answers. Honestly, I think I'll pledge to be a thorn on whoever wins side, basically. So I think as far as any elected or any candidate, you want to make sure they're doing what's right for the community first. So you work with who you have to work to get the right things done. Because in the end, you want to change the direction of the county itself. There's like a 3-2 split right now on the board, and right now is mostly conservative folk. So I know as someone who lives in day-to-day life, I cannot afford to say I'm not working with anyone. You cannot afford that. You can't afford that. So you have to work with who you have to work with to make things right for the community, and that's my concern.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next question will be for the 2 District 2 candidates on the far end down there, Greg and Pam. And this is another sort of esoteric question. Which of the commissioner chair candidates, Mr. Deckard, Ms. Harrington, Mr. Woolley, or Mr. Bob Terry, who is not here tonight, do you feel you align with most closely, philosophically and policy-wise? And why do you feel that way? So, Pam, since I didn't call on you once, you get the choice of going first or last. It's up to you.
I'm gonna let you go. I'll be thinking about you right now.
I've looked at, first of all, I'm not going to be able to support a conservative, so that's out. What I will do, having experience being on the low end of that 3-2 split for the last 8 years, is once again take a hard look at the folks involved in the race and see where their alliances lie. I'm probably going to go with the most progressive person in that race. Right now, it's not a secret. I've endorsed Catherine at this point, but hopefully I won't cost you any votes. But the point is that whoever gets it, whichever one of these 3 people go forward, and who knows, it might be 2 of the 3, we don't know. Whoever does go forward, we need to look at where they see the importance in the community. What are the big problems that we need to get rid of? Yeah, I managed to finish it without saying that.
So, would you ask me the question one more time?
Sure. So, which of the commission chair candidates, Mr. Deckard, Ms. Harrington, Mr. Woolley, or Mr. Woodley, sorry, Mr. Woodley, my bad, or Mr. Terry, who's not here tonight, do you feel you align with most closely, philosophically and policy-wise? And then why do you feel that?
I can say, first of all, that I've had a solid working relationship with Catherine for the last 5 years. I worked with her and I've watched the work that she does at Metro, and I know that she is a committed, solid candidate. There's no question about that. I've also worked with Ryan Deckert for a long time. When Ryan was the executive director of OBA, I'm currently the executive director of WEA. We have had many times that we've worked together. What's important to me is that the person that's in that job is someone who can be collaborative and who can work across the board. The person that can get to solve the problem within that 5-person commission. So I believe both people have the skills, but at the same time, I think that those two would be my top candidates. Fair?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Okay. And one of our last questions tonight are for the Metro 4 candidates, and it's a 2-minuter again. All right. So I'm going to start with you, Dana. Okay. How will you fight to protect our urban growth boundary to ensure we keep our urban centers, defend our wildlife, parks, and farmland from suburban creep?
I think that's a fantastic question. I think that's been I'm really glad to see a lot of the Washington County councilors bring this up, because we need to actually look at zones that aren't being fully utilized. We have, multiple times people down here, they know it, they see it, TV highway. How many times have we driven down the road and we see a strip mall that's dilapidated? Well, the problem is it's, zoned as non-residential. We need to actually, change that and actually start utilizing the billions of dollars we've already invested in when it comes to infrastructure, roads, sewers, electric, all that stuff. Again, we've already put our tax dollars to that, but it's not being fully utilized in those zones. Let's use those zones before we start even talking about expanding the urban growth boundary. Once we expand the urban growth boundary, you can't reverse it unless you want to have a giant construction project to rip up that concrete. That ain't going to happen. So let's utilize what's already there. And I'm so glad to see it. We're all on the same page on this one, because it's also the right thing to do, the most cost-effective thing to do. And it's the quickest way to do it too, especially we need that housing now. We need that affordable housing now. If we can go rezone a strip mall, that construction project is going to be a snap compared to going through the steps to open up the urban growth boundary, zoning it out, paving, digging it out, paving it out. We need it now. So we have that space right now. Let's look at it. Let's rezone it. Let's get it done.
Thank you. Would you like me to read the question again? It's kind of long. Okay. How will you fight to protect our urban growth boundary to ensure we keep our urban centers, defend our wildlife, parks, and farmland from suburban creep?
Well, I think the urban growth boundary is what makes us Oregonians. That's the reason that Metro was first created, to make sure that as a region we're able to have a growth boundary that is responsive to the needs of the region that we have right now. Everyone said it already, but I'm a huge proponent of density and looking at how we can redesign what our communities look like. You look at places like Oreco Station, places that have received national praise for how smart those are planned, with commercial spaces, with parks, with living, with housing. The only thing is, my only qualm with that is that it's built to a certain price point of people that can afford to live there. That's why I think it's so important for us as a region to consider a housing bond, because not just Portland can solve it alone, not just Hillsborough can solve it alone, etc. I think that it's the cost and leadership that we need to take on as a region. In my work at Centro, I've had the opportunity to work on a bunch of really great projects like East Council Creek, Chehalem Ridge, closely in partnership with the Parks and Nature Department, and looking at how we can continue to secure important watersheds, habitats, etc. Because at the end of the day, the reason that I'm running, that most of us that are here at this table, is we want to make sure that in the next 50 to 100 years, the region that we leave for those Oregonians holds on to the values that we have right now. And I think that we're all up here today because we think we see that that's at risk. We're at risk of losing that. You know, we're at risk of embracing a suburban crawl of just building housing, and people calling it a supply and demand issue, but it's not that. You know, if we're able to invest in density, if we're able to invest in smart transportation and connectivity, and if we're able to bring all of that together, then I think that we can leave the region that we want to and make sure that everyone, regardless of where you come from, can live in Portland the way that it should be.
Thank you. Okay, we are going to give the candidates now each 2 minutes to do their closing arguments. No scary questions. You can say whatever you want. And I'm going to start with Pam because I've always made her last.
Well, first of all, I want to say again, my thank you to everybody in this room. I appreciate the fact that you engage in the democratic process. That's important, and I believe that well-informed voters are the best voters we can possibly ask for. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for putting this on. I am running for this office because I believe strongly that I've had the experience working at the junction between the private sector and the public sector, that what I can bring is the opportunity to take advantage of the expertise on both sides of that coin to work in Washington County. I feel strongly that we are in a situation that we need people to raise their hands. I spent this last year looking at the national political situation, and I know that given my experience, given what I've learned, I couldn't look at my granddaughters and say I didn't try. And that's what's important to me. It's very important that I bring my expertise to the table and work with the residents of Washington County to develop a better place for all of us to live. This is a very interesting time for us. We're at the tsunami in terms of the crisis that we face, whether it's transportation or if it's our housing issue. Those two things, as we've talked about, are tightly related. I have a deep level of expertise in the transportation world. I sit on the ODOT Area Commission on Transportation. I've had opportunities to participate in many areas to focus there. We didn't talk so much about that tonight, but it's a key issue. The other issue that I commit to is continued public safety. We have to feel safe in our own communities, and that safety goes from our elder citizens in our community and to our children in the schools. We have to make sure that we are looking at gun control, and we have to take care of our kids. Please vote for me.
Thank you, Pam. And I'm going to swing it to the other end and have Dana give his 2 minutes.
You know, for the past 5 years, I've been working at Metro, and I've been an extremely active union member where I've helped achieve some incredible things. I helped unionize all the food workers at the Oregon Zoo. I helped to organize all the Metro Park workers. You know, in that time, you know, I've fought and negotiated pay raises for 100 employees, sick days before it became the state law. You know, to do those things, though, to negotiate labor contracts and negotiate within Metro and the HR department on things that cost millions of dollars, you have to come together and get things done. And I've been working at Metro internally getting things done. You know, I am surprised. I am the low man on the totem pole as an Oregon Zoo employee and also as a hazardous waste technician, both temp jobs. I've been a temp worker for 5 years. But I've changed the lives of hundreds of people. The poorest workers at Metro, the most diverse workforce, I've helped improve their lives because I've dedicated my time and my life to improving things at Metro. And now I see an opportunity where I can take my education and my 5 years of experience and my passion to help people and bring it to the entire region. You know, I think that's why we're all here, is because we want to help people. And I see this golden opportunity to bloom as a servant leader and bring what needs to come to Washington County. And that's why I'm asking for your support and your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. Greg?
I thank you too for this opportunity, and you know, these are some of my favorite kinds of people around here. I did want to say that there's, the things we need to do in the county is for all boats to rise. We don't need winners and we don't need losers. We need, you know, somebody said, well, Greg, if you put in housing for all these poor people, what if we get more than our share? 72,000 of them live here, that's our share. You know? And as one of you noted, that we're looking at a displacement of jobs. There's going to be a lot more poor people in the future. We need secure housing. We need people that are happy to live where they're living and not sad that they have to live there. And that's at all levels. I see my job to a great extent is to educate you to what the questions are, to help you get on advisory boards, to help you get the information you need so you can feed back to me what it is you'd like me to do. This is a democracy. But the best way to protect our own share of it is to make sure everyone gets a share. And that is just what we need to be doing. In 2008, we voted that if we would cover 30%, if the taxpayer or if the developer would cover 30% of the cost of putting in infrastructure for roads for their development, the rest of us would cover the other 70. Is that still the deal we want? I've tried to get our guys to talk to folks and see what people think. They think it would confuse you. I don't think you'd be confused at all. You're $3 billion in the hole. That's what I'm here to tell you. Now you tell me how you'd like to go about fixing that or deciding that's okay. Let the kids pay for it. So you guys need to make that decision, and I'll help you carry it out. I hope you'll vote for me. I'm looking forward to being on a group where I don't have to argue if people deliberately try to lower their wages to get half-price bus tickets.
Thank you, Craig. Juan Carlos?
All right. I come from a comunidad and a cultura of storytelling. And at the core of everything that I've done in my career is storytelling in the hopes of advancing racial equity, in the terms of empowering communities of color, in terms of driving investment to change lives. If there's the reason that I'm running, if there's one thing that I learned, and I think we all remember that fateful night in November of 2016, I was in my living room, I was in my pajamas with my puppy and my roommate, and I saw that map turn from projected blue to secured red. And what did that show us? That showed us, one, if you're not out there telling your stories, someone's gonna tell the story about you. And I don't want anyone telling those stories about my community that are just false. Second, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. It's true. And the reason that I'm running here is because I grew up in this community. Washington County has been my home my entire life. A little story, when my dad first moved here from Mexico, and he moved to Cornelius because that was the agricultural base of Washington County at the time. And the two strongest connections of the stories that he told me were, one, I was homeless when I moved here, I slept under this tree, and two, I would ride my bike every single day to this nursery for the first few months. Transportation, housing. Two things that Metro focuses a strong lens of investment, two things that impact people in my community to this day, and I see it every single day at Centro. And the reason that I'm running is because the region of the future, the region that I want to leave for future Oregonians is one where people like my dad, like my family, like my neighbors can continue to afford to live in. And if we don't invest now, if we don't have collaborative partnerships, if we don't work with our cities and with our counties in this region, that region is not going to be the one we have today. So I hope to ask for your support and your vote this May.
Thank you, Juan Carlos. Shaba.
Well, like I said, like you said over here earlier about a little bit about me. I've lived here for most of my adult life, and I don't only know about the problems, I've experienced the problems. After my mother passed away, I adopted my little brother. I experienced walking him to school in between trees because there's no sidewalks. I experienced having to choose between dinner and rent because rent was consistently going up every 6 months or every year. I've experienced most of the issues that everyday people here in Washington County go through. One of the things they talk about, you have the same people saying the same things, wanting new positions. But it's all going to be the same. You go back a couple years ago, everything we're saying is in there. All the newspapers, they say the same thing. You need different people. You can't just have people who just want your vote. You gotta have people that want things to change themselves and for the people around them at the same time. So I'm not running just to run. I'm not running just because I want to win a position. I want to run because I want people like me who've experienced the bad side of life to have a better opportunity. I've been to those bad places. I've experienced the struggle. And we still do occasionally experience the struggle. And I don't want anyone else to be there. So that's what I'm looking for. And I don't only want your support, I want your support to make things better for you, for me, and everyone else around us. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelba. Ryan?
Thanks. I love, it is just wonderful having the Israeli folk music as our background. It just is, we should do this at all political gatherings now, is have folk music from Israel as our foundation. I'm going to say something off what Juan Carlos, because he got me thinking when he talked about where, I think we all remember where we were. It was a defining moment in my life when Trump, it affects me today, of where we were. And I think back, about 11 years ago, I had just left. So I was chair of the Senate Finance Committee, and I decided I would resign my seat. It was the second most powerful, it was a great opportunity, but I decided to resign my seat in the state Senate and take another opportunity. And I had little girls, and I retreated somewhat from public life. Certainly involved, but not to the day-to-day of being all-in state senator. And about 2 months after that, something different happened in Chicago. Nationally happened, but the Obamas came out. And I remember those are the 2 times I cried. When Barack and Michelle Obama took the stage, and I just felt like so much potential. And it was frankly, even with all the arrows and shoots, it was an amazing 8 years for the world, for the globe. And then this is what we have now today. And so something important is happening in America. It's happening here in Levy. It's happening tonight. Is you are coming out, you are gathering. Fine people across the board are doing something. And it's happening in Pennsylvania, and it's happening in Alabama, and soon it's going to happen across the country, and we're going to change this. No place in this state requires more philosophical, cultural change than the county that we reside in terms of attacking, and I use the lean in, lean out. The fundamental problem of our county has been they've been leaning out.
Good job. And last but not least, Catherine.
You heard in my bio that I moved to Washington County almost 30 years ago. It is my first true home. I chose to leave the high-tech sector in 2004 in order to give back to the community that has given me so much. And I have done just that. I worked as a community advocate for 2 years, and then I was asked to run for office, and I ran for this Metro seat. One of the challenges that brings us tonight, Revolution Washington County and Indivisible Cedar Mill, are some of the challenges for urban unincorporated Washington County.
Yeah.
It was reflected in our questions. I get a lot of kudos from my constituents. I have a majority of urban unincorporated Washington County in my metro district is being out in the community. And that's what it's going to take as the chair and as the county commission. We're blessed to have Commissioner Malinowski. He does that too as well. But we don't have that progressive thinking on the majority of the board. And it goes beyond progressive thinking. You have to be tied within the community. I'm doing that as a Metro councilor. I've been doing that for 11 plus years now. I've been canvassing door to door since September for this race. I've been on over 2,800 doorsteps all by myself, not even counting the volunteers that are canvassing on my behalf or in group canvasses as well. That means doing the math, and I keep track of stats. I've had over 700 great conversations, hearing about people's concerns. And the concerns, while there is similarity, there are also differences, particularly as displayed across the income spectrum. But that's part of the richness of Washington County. We need to get away, unlike one of my opponents who wants to see our state legislator change to a centrist style. We need to keep true to our progressive values here in Washington County.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to, as I close up tonight, I'm going to hop on the Where Was I back in 2016. But first I'm going to give a little history. When my husband and I were getting married, he said, I want to run into politics. And I'm like, well, I don't know if we should be seeing each other anymore, because I was like, no way, I don't want that spotlight in my life. So, roll forward, children, whatever, 2016, my daughter starts crying when President Trump wins, because she thinks we're going to go to war with Mexico. And so, thank God that's not the case, but we all know there's a lot more horrible things. So I got involved with Washington County Resistance, and not because I really had that desire, it's just because I thought, I can't let my daughter be crying on election night that we're going to be going to war and have that fear. So I have maximum gratitude for everybody here, for all you guys putting your effort out here. If it's your first time running or you've run a long time, I really want to thank you. And I know everybody in both of our groups worked really hard to give questions that really meant a lot to us. I know they're a little hard, but we figured this is the time that we have to do it. So again, maximum gratitude. Thank you so much for coming. And